Free agency reset the quarterback market heading into the 2018 NFL Draft. Which teams are still after the top guys in round 1, which will wait until day 3, which will sit out altogether. NFL Nation reporters evaluated the likelihood of each team drafting a quarterback in January. Here are their updated ratings based on the following scale. Go to Mel Kiper's Mock Draft 3.0, Todd McShay's Top 324, very likely in the first 3 rounds. Arizona Cardinals signed Sam Bradford and Mike Glennon in free agency, but neither is a long-term solution. They both inked 2-year contracts, but Arizona left room on the roster for another quarterback or 2. And one will very likely come through the draft, either at number 15, or if the Cardinals move up to make one of the top 4 or 5 prospects their quarterback of the future. Josh Weinfuss, Buffalo Bills. It would be shocking if the Bills did not draft a quarterback within the first 3 rounds. After general manager Brandon Beane took a methodical approach to the free agent quarterback market and essentially let A.J. McCarron fall to Buffalo at a bargain price, the Bills are still on the prowl for a potential franchise quarterback. The question is not whether they will draft one, they almost undoubtedly will, but whether they will trade up to secure one of the draft's top quarterbacks. The Jets' trade up to number 3 made life tougher on the Bills, as they must now pay the Giants a ransom for the number 2 pick, or potentially allow a coveted quarterback to fall to an AFC East rival. Mike Rodakfan, April 26-28, where Arlington, Texas. NFL Draft Coverage, full order, 1-256, Mel Kiper's Mock Draft 2.0, Todd McShay's Mock Draft 3.0, Kiper's Big Board, McShay's Top 32, projecting QB booms, busts, Kipper, regrading 2017 NFL Draft, Cleveland Browns. If 5 were a rating, it would be that certain. The Browns will draft a quarterback in the first round, most likely first overall, with Sam Darnold being the most likely option and Josh Allen the second most likely. Pat McManam in Denver Broncos. The Broncos would use the number 5 pick on a quarterback, but only if the quarterback they deem to be the best is available. They won't just take any of the top QBs who remain. They've been mum on where they stand with the top prospects so far, but it's clear that Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield fits the offense they are poised to run the best and would be a natural to pair with Case Keenum. If they miss on the QB they want, they'll keep an eye out and figure to select one before the draft is done. There is one quirk, however, in that all 9 of their picks at the moment are in the first 5 rounds of the draft. Jeff Legwold, Jacksonville Jaguars. There is only one QB currently on the roster, starter Blake Bortles. The Jaguars will likely sign a veteran backup and need to draft someone to sit and develop for a year or 2 and possibly be ready to take over if the team decides to move on from Bortles after 2019. It's not likely in the first round, unless someone they like surprisingly drops to number 29, so expect the Jaguars to grab one on day 2. That means they'll be targeting the second tier of quarterbacks such as Luke Falk, Kyle Lawletter and Chase Litton. Mike DeRocco, Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers haven't drafted a quarterback since 2013. However, with Philip Rivers turning 37 years old in December, the Bolts need to groom an eventual replacement for their franchise quarterback. Coach Anthony Lynn attended the pro days of Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, and the team's scouting staff has done extensive work on the quarterback position for a second straight year. The Chargers likely will not draft a quarterback in the first round, but there's a good chance they'll select a signal caller on day 2. Eric D. Williams, New England Patriots. We're going all in on the QB pick for the Patriots as they search for Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0. Tom Brady turns 41 in August and Brian Hoyer is 32, so developing a young signal caller has to be a top priority. NFL Network analyst Mike Mayock made the point that there are usually about 11 to 12 quarterbacks drafted each year, and this year's class has about 10 who could go within the first 4 rounds. So it looks like the supply could meet the demand in New England. The Patriots have the following picks to consider a QB within the first 4 rounds: number 31 first round Nos. 43 and 63 second, number 95 third and number 136 fourth. Mike Reis, New York Jets. It would be one of the biggest shockers in recent draft history if the Jets didn't take a quarterback with the 3rd pick. Yes, they have high grades on RB Saquon Barkley and Bradley Chubb, but they traded 4 draft picks to move up 3 spots. A team doesn't do that unless it's focused on a quarterback. Josh Allen and Josh Rosen appear to be the most likely candidates, but don't dismiss Baker Mayfield as a possibility. Rich Cimini 3.5, likely, but probably not on day one. Baltimore Ravens. There are some mixed signals coming from the Ravens here. Assistant General Manager Eric DeCosta said Baltimore could draft a quarterback in the first round if the right one is there. This comes about a month after owner Steve Bisciotti scoffed at the notion that the Ravens have begun to think about life after Joe Flacco. It looks like the most likely scenario is Baltimore taking a quarterback somewhere between rounds 3 and 5. That would give the Ravens a backup to Flacco and a replacement for Ryan Mallett, who is a free agent. Jamison Hensley, Pittsburgh Steelers. This number has gone up because of the message from coach Mike Tomlin, who says the Steelers have used the past few drafts as a dry run for drafting a quarterback high. At some point, it's going to be real, and maybe it is this year, Tomlin said. That leaves the Steelers somewhere in the middle. There's no need to duplicate last year's Day 3 plan, drafting Joshua Dobbs in the 4th round. They have 36-year-old Ben Roethlisberger for a few more years. Still, watch for Pittsburgh on Day 2. The Steelers are high on Mason Rudolph and will keep a close eye on Lamar Jackson. Jeremy Fowler 3, likely, but on Day 3 Carolina Panthers. There's a chance the Panthers could pull the trigger on a quarterback on Day 2 since they have 2 third-round picks. They want to develop a future replacement for Cam Newton, who is 28th. They haven't resigned Derek Anderson, who has backed up Newton since 2011, though that's still a possibility. In all likelihood, Carolina will wait until Day 3 to draft a quarterback to develop, with more urgent needs expected to be met in the first 3 rounds. David Newton. Houston Texans. Texans added Brandon Weeden in free agency, but it's unlikely he will start the as Deshaun Watson's backup. Houston is confident Watson will be back in time for training camp, but it was clear the Texans' options last after Watson tore his ACL were not enough to win. They could use one of their 3 third-round picks to take a quarterback, but it's more likely they'll wait until Day 3. Sarah Barshop. New Orleans Saints. The Saints are ready to draft a QB to develop behind Drew Brees, which they proved when they almost traded Patrick Mahomes too with the 11th overall pick last year. The problem is that they don't have much draft capital to work with. They pick 27th in round 1 and don't have a second-round pick. So it would be very hard for them to trade up for one of the top 4 prospects, and they'd have to really love someone like Louisville's Lamar Jackson to use their only pick in the top 90 on him. The Saints to have 2 younger developmental backups on the roster in recently signed free agent Tom Savage and intriguing second-year pro Taysom Hill, whom Sean Payton is extremely high on. But they would still be wise to draft a QB in the middle rounds to see whether they can find their version of Dak Prescott. Mike Triplett. 250-50 chance. The Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are about to give Matt Ryan a new lucrative extension, and he hasn't missed a start since the 2009. They also have Matt Schaub signed through the 2018 and kept only 2 QBs on the active roster last. That being said, the Falcons might look at a late-round option as a developmental quarterback, so we'll leave that possibility open here. But quarterback isn't a pressing need with 2 veterans. Vaughn McLeod. Chicago Bears. The Bears have Mitchell Trubisky, the 2nd overall pick in 2017, as the long-term starter. Chicago also paid veteran Chase Daniel $7 million guaranteed to serve as Trubisky's primary backup in 2018. Taylor Bray, who played alongside Daniel and under new Bears coach Matt Nagy in Kansas City, was added to Chicago's roster as the 3rd quarterback. The Bears could draft a developmental QB to compete with Bray, but the top 2 spots on the quarterback depth chart are already spoken for. Jeff Dickerson. Josh Allen or Sam Darnold. To the Browns. 5 quarterbacks off the board in the top 15. Mel Kiper Jr. projects the first round of April's draft, with a few surprises. Saquon Barkley still heads up Todd McShay's latest prospect rankings, but could an offensive lineman nose ahead of the top QBs? Here are the top 32 players in the 2018 NFL Draft right now. Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals signed veteran Matt Barkley to back up Andy Dalton after the departure of A.J. McCarron, but whether they draft a QB will depend on how they feel about Jeff Driscoll, who has been on the roster for 2s but never played. The Bengals drafted McCarron in the 5th round of 2014 despite having Jason Campbell on the roster as a backup, so Barkley's presence certainly wouldn't be a deterrent. With 11 picks, a late-round QB is possible. Catherine Terrell. Dallas Cowboys. This ranking has not changed since the ended. The Cowboys are going with Dak Prescott as their starter, and they like the potential of Cooper Rush, who earned the number 2 job last summer after signing as an undrafted free agent. Rush's presence, however, won't take the Cowboys out of the quarterback market. They've drafted only 5 quarterbacks in Jerry Jones' tenure as owner and general manager, so the odds are against them selecting one in 2018. If they do, it will be on day 3, and they have looked at a number of mid-round quarterbacks early on in the draft process, like Richmond's Kyle Lauletta. The Cowboys currently have 7 picks in rounds 4 to 7. Todd Archer, Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have only 2 quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes II and Chad Henne, under contract. They'll go to training camp with 4 QBs, which means the other 2 will have to come from somewhere. While Kansas City has too many other needs to invest in a quarterback in an early round, it wouldn't be a surprise to see the Chiefs go for one later in the draft. Adam Tyker, Miami Dolphins. The top 4 quarterbacks will likely be gone by the time the Dolphins pick at number 11, so if they draft one, he will likely be a project. Ryan Tannehill, who is entering his 7th and returning from an ACL tear, will step back into the starting role. Miami picked up Brock Osweiler, who played under coach Adam Gase in Denver, as Tannehill's backup in free agency. All that said, Gase could still be looking for Tannehill's replacement, so drafting a quarterback can't be ruled out. ESPN.com. New York Giants. Maybe this rating should be higher with a number 2 overall pick than a quarterback who will be 38 years old before the end of this. It's just that it's far from a slam dunk that the Giants go QB in that spot. Many of their off-season moves indicate they're prioritizing making one more run with Eli Manning. That makes it a strong possibility the quarterback position, especially with Davis Webb on the roster, won't be addressed this year. Jordan Raanan. San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have Jimmy Garoppolo locked in as their starter for the next 5 years, and they hope it's a relationship that lasts even longer. The Niners also like what they saw from rookie C.J. Beathard last year, and he has the inside track to be Garoppolo's primary backup. Still, if coach Kyle Shanahan and the Niners see a signal caller with some upside in the late rounds, they could potentially bring him in to compete with Beathard for a spot behind Garoppolo. Either way, the Niners feel good about their quarterback room. Nick Wagner. Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson is the only quarterback the Seahawks have drafted since coach Pete Carroll and general manager John Schneider arrived in 2010, but it wouldn't be at all surprising if that changed this year. Actually, with no backup quarterback currently under contract and Wilson a year away from what could be tricky negotiation for an extension, it might be the right time to draft one and fortify the position behind him. Trevone Boykin was the only backup on the Seahawks roster before they released him Tuesday. Last year's number 2, Austin Davis, remains unsigned. The Seahawks are thin on early round draft capital. They're currently without a 2nd or 3rd round pick, so if they do finally draft another quarterback this year, chances are it wouldn't be until one of the middle or later rounds. Brady Henderson. Tennessee Titans. The Titans made a good move parting ways with veteran backup Matt Castle, then brought in Blaine Gabbert as his replacement. Gabbert isn't necessarily the top-tier backup QB they were calling for earlier this offseason, but he's an upgrade over Castle, providing a combination of mobility and experience. Still, drafting a long-term or developmental backup option for Marcus Mariota late on day 2 or on day 3 might still be in play here. Cameron Wolf. Washington Redskins. The Redskins won't be drafting a quarterback early, unless by some chance a player they absolutely can't pass up falls to them. But there's no reason for Washington to do so, not after trading for Alex Smith and giving him a 4-year extension that guarantees a high-priced quarterback for at least the next 4 years. They also have Colt McCoy, who has 1 more year left on his deal. That's where we get the 50-50 chance. The Redskins would like to keep McCoy around, but if he somehow leaves, it would be good for them to have a strong backup. They could draft a quarterback late with the idea of grooming him like they wanted to do with Nate Sudfeld. Keep in mind, though, that coach Jay Gruden is comfortable with having only 2 quarterbacks. The heavy amount of injuries last is proof as to why a 3rd QB would have been viewed as a luxury. John Keim. 1. Not likely. Detroit Lions. The Lions don't need a starting quarterback because they have Matthew Stafford, and he's not going anywhere for a while. Detroit brought back Stafford's backup from last year, Jake Rudock, as well. While there's a chance Detroit brings in some competition for Rudock either by late free agency or the draft, there's not a glaring need there. And with only 6 picks at this point, Detroit needs players elsewhere. That said, if a quarterback unexpectedly falls, as Brad Kaaya did last year, the Lions could use some day 3 draft capital on a quarterback. Otherwise, it's not a spot they need at this point. Michael Rothstein. Green Bay Packers. Their acquisition of DeShone Kizer in a trade with the Browns eliminated the need for a quarterback in this draft. The Packers actually considered Kizer at number 33 overall last year, but ended up taking cornerback Kevin King. Now, they have Kizer to compete with Brett Hundley for the backup job behind Aaron Rodgers. The Packers needed someone to push, and possibly overtake, Hundley after his uneven performance last year following Rodgers' broken collarbone. Rob Demovsky. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are working under the belief that Andrew Luck's shoulder will be back for the 2018 after missing all of last. They also have third-year player Jacoby Brissett to go with Philip Walker and Brad Kaaya on the roster at quarterback. New coach Frank Reich, formerly the Eagles' offensive coordinator, saw the importance of having a viable backup while in Philadelphia when Nick Foles stepped in for the injured Carson Wentz and led the Eagles to the Super Bowl last. Brissett started 15 games for Indianapolis after being acquired from New England a week before the start of the regular last year. The Colts can use their 9 draft picks on more important needs than quarterback. Mike Wells. Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have had a generally eventful offseason, but they have remained spectators to the quarterback madness that has taken place around them. They feel secure with Jared Goff, the 23-year-old who made the Pro Bowl as a second-year player and will cost less than $5 million toward the 2018 salary cap. So LA will probably spend most of its draft capital on linebackers and offensive linemen. The Rams might have to eventually address the situation behind Goff, with Sean Mannion a free agent next offseason and Brandon Allen already 25 years old combining for 50 career NFL passes. But this is not the offseason to do it. Alden Gonzalez. Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings landed their quarterback of the foreseeable future in Kirk Cousins and shored up the QB room with an experienced vet in Trevor Siemian. Minnesota has much bigger needs to fill with the 30th overall pick, which could very well be spent on an offensive lineman or defensive tackle. Even beyond that, the Vikings' selections in the early rounds need to go toward filling out depth at tight end, possibly finding the number 3 wide receiver, a nickel corner if they don't sign a veteran in free agency, and continuing to build the offensive and defensive lines. Courtney Cronin. Oakland Raiders. The Raiders already have their franchise quarterback in Derek Carr. They also still have Connor Cook, a 4th-round draft pick in 2016 and a favorite of coach John Gruden's, still on the roster. Plus, Oakland signed another former Gruden draft pick in Josh Johnson and resigned last year's backup, E.J. Manuel. So unless something is terribly amiss, and experience is trumped by the promise of a late-round QB pick, the Raiders are set at the position for the foreseeable future. Or have you already forgotten about Carr's 5-year, $125 million contract extension last summer? Paul Gutierrez. Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles feel very good about their quarterback room at the moment. They have their franchise QB in Carson Wentz, Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles as backup, and who they believe is an up-and-comer in Nate Sudfeld as the third stringer. There really wouldn't be room for another signal caller unless they trade Foles, which coach Doug Peterson told ESPN on Tuesday is unlikely to happen. Tim McManus. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jameis Winston is the Bucs starter as he heads into year 4. While he took a step back in 2017, the team believes that he can rebound in 2018, and that his shoulder injury was a big reason for his struggles with deep ball accuracy. While Winston's status for next is uncertain due to a league investigation of allegations that he groped an Uber driver, the Bucs have veteran Ryan Fitzpatrick back for another year. The third quarterback, Ryan Griffin, is entering his 4th year in coach Dirk Koetter's system, and they feel really good about the strides he made last in training camp before suffering a shoulder injury. Jenna Lane.